You're listening to Nurture Your Zest. I'm your host, Ashleigh King, and I will introduce you to a wealth of interesting, fascinating individuals from all walks of life who will share their stories, how they've overcome challenges, and you will find out their top tips for success. Through this podcast, you can gain tips to grow and change your life and the way you see the world, and help you to nurture your zest. Hello, I'm Ash. Thanks for tuning in. Today I'm joined by Maggie. Maggie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Maggie Elstob. I work in sport and play sport, and that's why I'm here to talk to Ash today.
I'm really excited to talk to you, Maggie, because you've got such a broad range of interests, and I just love that you're a girl in sport or a woman in sport. Very inspiring for me because I long ago forgot about how wonderful it is to be into physical activity. And I just wonder what keeps you so engaged in it. You know, you're in your 20s. How have you stayed so up to date and involved in sport?
I think I just never stopped. So I know a lot of girls give up sport when they are in secondary school and then don't really pick it up again ever, or they don't pick it up until they're slightly older, once they've had children, and then they can find time to do exercise again. I just never stopped. So I played sport of all sorts right through school, and then I played netball at university, and kind of have done exercise classes and been to the gym and all that sort of stuff, and just maintained it through. So I never really stopped, and I've loved it the whole time I've done it and think it's so important.
So why do you think that some girls do actually give up their interest in sport?
I think a lot of that happens around this sort of age where you become aware of your body image. I think sort of that time in secondary school, probably between the ages of 13 and 15, and then after that when you don't have to do compulsory PE lessons anymore, and a lot of girls become aware of how they look and what they think people think of them, and then decide maybe that it's not worth it to carry on. I think I was really, really lucky at school that my friendship group was very much involved in sport and wanted to play sport, and we used to go off every lunchtime and do a different club or a different activity, and that made it so much easier. It meant that I didn't have to say, oh, actually I'm going off this lunchtime to go and do this or that. We would all just go together, whereas I know that there was definitely groups of girls in our school that maybe didn't get involved so much, and then if you were part of that group and you have to make a statement by going off and playing sport or doing activity or missing out on parties or sleepovers because you are committed to a club outside of school, making that impact really, it gives you a choice to make, and I was just really fortunate that it was very, very easy for me to choose sport.
That's really interesting. I think when I think about why I stopped sport, I was really active in sport when I lived in South Africa, and then my family immigrated to the UK, and the climate change was quite big just in terms of the weather was so different in the UK. I was used to really, really hot sunny days, lots of running, swimming, all sorts of activities that I found it really hard when I moved to the UK and it was cold, and just the motivation to kind of get up and do sport. But I also found it quite hard as a new person coming into school to know how to engage with those kind of clubs and activities. And I think my particular school didn't really talk us through what opportunities were available. We did have PE, but it was mainly dodgeball or things like that we did. So I think that also comes down to what school you go to and what provision is available in schools in the UK.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. I was kind of in a middle ground, so I went to grammar school, and PE and sport was fairly well kind of covered until sixth form, and then there wasn't so much on after that, whereas I know kind of people who went to private school and were overwhelmed with the amount of opportunity that there was to play sport, and it's part of life at private school, whereas I think at kind of state schools it's not so much. And I know certainly when I was at secondary school it was getting less and less, and people weren't so keen on going and playing. And we used to go and play a local private school and think how amazing it was that they got every Wednesday, everybody just went and played sport, and every Saturday morning everyone went and played sport, or you did music or drama or did something else to kind of add to that extracurricular aspect. Because I don't think it's possible for everyone in the world to love and play sport, but I think having that extra interest, having an extra dimension to your friendship groups, to your what you can talk about, I think is really, really important. It just so happened that mine was sport.
It's really interesting. Thank you. So, and you mentioned that you were really lucky to have friends around you who also appreciated sport. I think that's a really good point. A lot of people are influenced by their friends, particularly in their teens, I guess, as well. Girls going through menstruation, as you were saying, their body changing. There are a lot of elements like that probably do come up. Would you say that, maybe some women or girls might drop out of sport in their teens? Do you think it's likely that they would get back into it at a later time?
I think a lot of, certainly women tend to come back to it once they've had their children. I know I was talking to a mum the other day whose child had picked up, it was either a running club or a class or something, and then as a parent she then spoke to other mums and they started doing the same. And I think for me it's really interesting, because I think really at school it's kind of not that, and I say this with inverted commas, that it's not that cool to play sport at school. Whereas when you go to if you go to university, everybody wants to be the group that's walking around in the tracksuit with their university badge on, and it's really, really cool to play sport. So it's interesting that you see then some people pick it back up at university, and then I think once you get a job and you work out how you're going to fit physical activity around the rest of your routine, it's slightly easier. I think I really admire women who manage to do it when they have young children, because I think I don't know how they manage to fit it in, but I think it's so brilliant that if they're able to do that. But I think it does tend to come when women have children that are a little bit older, and so they can be at a club whilst their mum goes out for a run or all that, or dad can step in and look after the kids whilst the mum is able to go and do activity. And I think it's really, really important. I hope when I eventually get to that point, I'm still able to do activity.
Absolutely. So you've been quite involved in the past in This Girl Can. Can you tell us a little bit about This Girl Can, why it exists, what it serves to help with, and what you like about it?
So it's a really important movement about getting women and girls into physical activity. So that means it doesn't necessarily have to be sport. For me, I'm a real team sport player. That's what I love doing. I love a team goal. I love team success. I love team mentality. But I also, enjoy going to classes and doing other bits and pieces. But so I ran the This Girl Can campaign when I worked for Newcastle University. And I actually found it quite difficult to get to work out what it was that inactive women and girls wanted to see. So I, as an active person I'm quite a confident person. I'm not very fearful of social situations, and it doesn't faze me getting involved in that kind of thing. So for me, I looked at the programme of events that we put on, and I thought, this is absolutely fantastic. We've got surf lessons, we've got free classes, we've got fun runs, we've got sports club taster sessions. What more could you want? And we didn't actually get that much engagement from the university community. I think part of it was because it chucked it down with rain all week, but I think some of that, and I spoke to some women who I know that run the campaign for the council, and I said, I think that campaign needs to be run, or at least it needs to engage within the planning phase women who are inactive, so that we as active women can find out what it is that we're missing, and because it's all well and good getting active, sporty women and girls to be active and play sport, but the people that we really want to get involved are those women who haven't been involved, and we need to hear from them what is holding you back, what would you like to see, and what can we do as people who are already involved in that community to get you to be part of it.
I think that's a really good question, and it's a really good point, because as someone who hasn't always been active in sport, I love the feeling when you've completed something. So I did the Great North Run a few weeks ago, and I loved that. It was amazing. I actually was working, so I was doing some work for Newcastle University social media team at the time. So I was taking selfies while I was running across the Tyne Bridge and things like that. So my time wasn't great, but I just loved the day. I had so much fun. I smiled, I chatted to people, and just the atmosphere was really wonderful. And it inspired me to get back into things like park runs. Recently I went on a nice bike ride for around 3-4 hours. That was great and very unusual for me. So I think making the time is really important. I think that's probably something a lot of women would say is a barrier. But I also wonder how many women are put off by how they look and the feeling of how other people will judge them. And I wonder, maybe you might have some comments on this, but I often think, if I want to go and do a dance class or go do body pump or something like that, I love the classes, but I am always intimidated by the other people there. Maybe the people who've always got the best leggings on, who look the part, who know every move, who never make a mistake, who always have the same spot at the front. And it's that kind of stuff that can be a little bit scary. And I wonder, as someone who is very active, what are your thoughts or comments around people's fears? Do you think some of those fears are understandable, or do you think that a lot of that is more unnecessary?
I think they're understandable, definitely. And I think one of the best things I ever heard was nobody ever does a workout and regrets it. So you might dread doing it, you might not want to go, but I don't think I've ever spoken to anyone, unless they've had a really traumatic injury, that said, I really wish I hadn't gone for that run, or I really wish I hadn't gone to that exercise class. So I think that is the most important thing, is if you could bottle the feeling that you get after you complete a workout, whatever that workout is, everybody would be taking it. And I think for me, because my mum is exactly the kind of woman that you're sort of talking about, that gets that kind of, oh, I don't really want to go and stand at the front and not know the moves, and I'm a bit worried about doing it, and it's a bit cliquey. And often those exercise class groups definitely can be. Same with sports clubs. I've definitely seen that. But my kind of advice, I guess, if I can give it, is don't. And it's so common, but don't worry about what everybody else thinks, because a lot of the time people aren't actually thinking that. And I think a lot of the time we can be our own worst enemy about thinking about what other people think of us, rather than actually thinking, I'm going to go because I'm going to enjoy this, and I'm going to try, and I'm going to learn. Because you're not going to go to a class and I used to dance. I go to a Zumba class and I do pick up moves straight away, but don't get them all right first time. And I definitely do what one of the class instructors called an unexpected solo. And that happens. And I think I would just love women to think, actually, I can't control what other people think of me. I don't even know whether they're thinking anything negative about me. They're probably thinking about their own lives. I think we all think that everybody's thinking about us, and actually we're all just thinking about ourselves a lot of the time. And I think, go put yourself in the middle of the group so that you can see the instructor, but you don't stand out at the front if you're worried about getting things wrong. And go and try so many different things. I think that's so important. A lot, and this is not specific to women, but a lot of people go try an exercise and think, well, I hated that, I'm not doing, that's it, I give up. But there's so much out there to do. Just find the thing that makes you happy and that you enjoy. But I really would love women to not worry about what other people think. I know that's a lot easier said than done, but if for what you're going to get out of it, it's so much worth it for getting past what other people think, what you think other people think about you, because is not actually what people think about you necessarily.
That's so true. One of my favorite things that's linked to this is that you outrunning everyone who's on the sofa.
Absolutely.
So that idea around, it doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter how big or small you are, or what you're wearing, but to not be on the sofa watching TV and just eating whatever it might be. You know, you're actually making the time to be there.
Yeah, and get out there and do things even when you don't really feel like it. I drove home from work the other day, felt really rubbish, and thought, you know, what I really, really want to do right now is go and lie on the sofa and watch TV and feel sorry for myself. And it was raining outside, and I thought, you know what, let's just try it. Let's just go out and do. And I did, you know, no equipment, was just in the garden. It's only a small garden, and just made up my own circuit. So it was all body weight. It was all me that I was moving. And it took maybe 20-25 minutes. It was raining, and it was so exhilarating to then finish it and think, actually, I feel so much better. And just go and do it. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. Just get your body moving. That's all you need to start with, is getting your body moving.
Absolutely. So can you tell us a bit about nutrition and sport? So a lot of people, when they do start sport, I know for myself, if I start going to the gym all the time, I think sometimes if you're not feeling yourself right, or you're not fueling yourself, you're not going to have the energy to go to the gym. So a lot of people drop off, or they drop out of the gym or other activities because they don't have the energy to sustain what they're doing. How can, what are your top tips for eating right and having that energy?
So people, I think from my experience, people really overcomplicate this, especially when it comes to if they're wanting to lose weight. And I think a lot of it comes from the basis is that what you need to do is eat less and move more, and there's not really much more to it. You can do all the different types of diets and crash diets and all those kind of things, but actually you just need to eat less and move more. So one of the things that I do, which so when I'm feeling like, you know, my jeans are a bit tighter and I fancy a bowl of crisps, for example, is I'll use a smaller bowl. So I'll fill the bowl, but I'll use a smaller bowl so that I still in my brain feel like I'm eating a full bowl of crisps, but actually that bowl of crisps is half the size of the one that I actually really would have poured. I eat a lot of vegetables, and I'm not so great on my fruit, but I do eat a lot of vegetables, and just eat a balance. So allow yourself a treat, but you know, I try to be quite good during the week and then have a bit of fun on a weekend. You know, I'm not a nutrition expert, but I think, you know, and there is a lot of conflicting advice out there. And I think it's one of the most frustrating things with the health and fitness industry is how much conflicting advice there is about, should you eat more carbs? Should you eat less carbs? Should you eat fats? Should you not eat fats? Should you have some sugars, but not all sugars? And I don't know how people even begin to navigate that. But I think all you can start with is, you know, you don't necessarily need to eat until you're full up and overflowing. Just eat until you feel like you've had enough. And if your body feels hungry, fuel it with good stuff. Don't fuel it with sweets and high sugar drinks. Fuel it with things that are going to last you. And I think that's probably would be my advice, is just listen to your body. It's there for a reason. It does things for a reason. So if it tells you it's hungry, eat something. If it tells you it's full, stop eating. But make sure you allow yourself those treats and let yourself have a bit of fun on a weekend, or whenever it is that you choose. You know, if you work different hours, just pick a couple of days where you think, actually, I'm going to allow myself to go and have a night out. I'm going to have a few drinks. I'm going to eat what I want, and that's okay. And don't feel like you've then ruined yourself for the rest of the week.
Really good points. Thank you. So I'd like to know, so as well as being really sporty, what else gets you going? What other hobbies do you have? What are your interests?
So I really love music. Really love listening, you know, going and watching live music. I go to quite a lot of concerts and festivals. I absolutely love music, and love kind of how that makes you feel. You know, I would say probably one of my happy places is to sit in the car with music on full blast and sing as loud as I possibly can do. And that's one of my absolute favourite things to do, and just feel completely free. So yeah, I do enjoy reading when I get a chance, but kind of my job and all my other hobbies kind of take over. But yeah, music and sport are definitely up there with my favourite things. I love to cook, I love to eat. I just love things that make me feel good. I think that's important.
Yeah, all of those things you've talking about, like eating well and looking after yourself, being physical, being exercising, they all do contribute a lot to self-care, which is something we talk a lot about on the show. We talk about nurturing your zest and finding ways to find your passion and the best version of yourself. So those are all really good points. And I just wonder, would you say that the sport that you do or being involved in sport, do you think has much of an impact on your mental health or your friends around you, or just generally sport and mental health? Do you think there's a connection?
Absolutely. I would argue with anybody that denied it. For me, sport and physical activity are my main stress relievers. So when I was 17, I dislocated my knee in a very unglamorous fashion and was out of activity for a long time. I was on crutches for between 6 and 8 weeks. And then it was a long time. It was actually like over a year before I then was able to get back into playing netball. So I went to the university trials and got in the team, and that was my first time back on court, and that was over a year later. And that was a really, really tough time for me. I just finished my AS level, so I was just going into my A-level year, and the one thing that removed stress from me, I couldn't do, and it felt very, very trapping. And now I even feel like if I have a down day or a tough time, and I will think like, oh, what can I change about this? What can I can't change the circumstances that are making me feel like this, whether it's family or work or whatever it is, but what can I change? Well, I can go to a class, or I can go. I'm not really a runner, but sometimes I think running is really great for your mental health. I would love to be able to get into it for what people say it does for your mental health. I think it's just, first off, obviously it has the physical benefits, and I think part of those physical benefits make you feel better mentally, and then I think there's all the other stuff that it does to clear your brain. And I just used to say, I'd spend an hour on a netball court, and that was an hour where I wasn't thinking about my exams or family issues or work issues or boyfriend issues. I was thinking about where I was going to throw the next pass or where I was going to run so I would keep a player out of the game. And for a whole hour of a day, I was thinking about that, and that completely just takes you out of your own world. And I think it's so important. I actually when I worked for Newcastle University, we piloted a project about sport and physical activity for mental health, and whether if you kind of ran it side by side with offering just counselling, what the benefits were like. And I think we're still waiting on the results of that outcome, but I would be very, very surprised if it was anything other than in favour of doing a physical activity to sort of work on your mental health. I think, I'm not a trained counsellor, I'm not a trained mental health advisor, but I know how it makes me feel. And I know that I have never come back feeling any worse than I left. And usually I come back feeling 20 times better.
Yeah, you're so right. It sounds like your experience of dislocating your knee, was it your knee that you dislocated? Yeah. That sounds like, as you've said, a really difficult time, and not being able to exercise when that was one of the best ways for you to find release sounds like really infuriating. So how long did you have that injury for, and how did you get back to it? I mean, did you do something every day working towards improving? How did you keep yourself sane in that time? So
I still really suffer from the aftermath of that injury now. I sort of describe it as so my sport is netball. I go up to get a pass, and I never really 100% trust that I'm going to come down safely, and it is quite frustrating. I'll go, I love exercise, but if I do one day too much, or I try and go out my sisters are really into their running, and haven't always been, but I've found that as something that they really enjoy, and we went out for a run on Christmas Day, and I thought, isn't this great? You know, we call it like Fit Fam, that we're going out and doing stuff like that. And I just came home and I was just in so much pain. And it's very, very frustrating when the one thing you want your body to be able to do, it can't do. So in terms of recovery, after I did my knee, I had a lot of physio. I had some scans to see if there were some operations that could be done, but they were going to put me out for a lot longer than I was willing to give. And so it's something that I probably need to go back to, because it does, you know, I find it every day. I do one movement or something that makes me go, oh gosh, that was close. You know, I turn around without moving my feet and I think, oh gosh, yeah, I've done it again. And it is really frustrating, but I think it comes down to I consider myself quite a brave person, and thinking, well, you know what, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, but I'm not going to have it stopping me do anything I want to do. And that can frustrate, you know, family members and partners and things, and they think, you know, just stop, just give your body time to rest. And I think, well, it's had 5 years, it's not going to change now. Like I said, I'm no doctor, but I think I just have to be brave and think, well, I handled it once, and if it happens again, I'll handle it then, but I'm not going to let it stop me doing something that is absolutely crucial to me getting through the day.
Yeah, it sounds like exercise for you is such a release, and the courage, you know, you've got to keep pushing, keep striving, and keep working towards improving yourself and healing that injury, even though it hurts. And you know, I think that takes a lot of courage. Would you say that the injury impacted your confidence at all in what you were able to achieve, or just how you felt about yourself, how you felt about yourself in a team?
Yeah, massively. I think at the time, so the day that I did it was the day before my first AS level exam. And so I had 3 exams that week. I missed 2 of them and I sat the next one at home. And then the following week I sat some more exams at home, and I found myself getting more and more comfortable with not being out and not being in public and being amongst crowds. And I'm not a particularly fearful person, but when I went back into school to take my next exam, and it was the first time I'd been amongst more than, you know, my mum and dad, pretty much, I found that very, very unnerving. And, you know, big crowds who it wasn't their priority to worry about what had happened to me, but to me it was kind of all encompassing. And so I sat in a room taking an exam with another 100 odd people, and it was quite unnerving, it was quite unsettling. And then definitely, you know, I still believe now that I don't run as fast as I used to. I can't change direction as quickly as I used to. You know, I used to be a good fast runner. So in terms of on a netball court, that is really important, getting away from a player, running onto a ball. And I just don't think it's ever been the same, which definitely makes you, confidence wise, you doubt then your ability to perform well in a team. You doubt whether you're good enough to be in a team, even when you're there, even when you've been put there by somebody else, somebody who's impartial, somebody who doesn't know about your injury. And it's kind of that imposter syndrome thing. You think, oh gosh, they must have just put me there because, you know, they feel like they should, or because, you know, they feel like they have to. And actually, you've got to remember that you're there on merit, and they've seen something or you've done something that is good enough. But it definitely knocked my confidence with regards to my ability to perform at my best. And I definitely believe that I haven't performed as well since I did that injury.
Wow. It's hard, isn't it, it's almost like you need to forgive yourself to move on from something. And the thing about an injury is we all make mistakes. You know, it's something that you can't help, and it's something that's just happened. So that what you've said earlier about that feeling of your body letting you down and feeling frustrated, then that is really hard.
Yeah, I do get that a lot, that feeling of my body letting me down and being frustrated, and think, you know, at my worst times thinking, you know, there's so many people that don't want to exercise and that don't want to do activity and that don't want to, you know, get out and use the body that they've been given. And I really want to use mine, and it's not letting me. And that is something that I've really, really struggled with, and probably will, you know, until, you know, I have a knee replacement or something, some magic fairy comes and sorts it out.
Yeah. Okay. In in terms of imposter syndrome, which you just mentioned, that's something that I'm always really interested in talking about, because we all experience it in different ways. I sometimes feel it in the boardroom if I'm, talking in meetings and I need to assert myself, or I've heard other women tell me about other times when they might get it. In fact, I just spoke to someone the other day who was saying that he gets it a lot. A feeling that who is he to think that he should be so successful or to do so well. So I always thought it was more of a trait that was associated with women, but actually it's not. I think it possibly could be, depending on the circumstances, but I was really surprised to hear that men can sometimes get it too. In times where you have felt like you've had imposter syndrome, how do you think you can overcome that?
I think it's really difficult, and I think, externally people probably wouldn't have said that I was the type of person that would feel like that. I think I'm quite a confident person, and actually in a work setting I don't ever really feel like that, and I'm not sure why that is, and why I feel it in a lot more in my personal life than I do in my professional life. And I think, I feel it a lot with friendships. I feel it a lot with being selected to be part of a team. I think I don't feel it at work because I've always felt like, when I've gone for jobs, I've felt like I was, qualified for them and I'd got the experience for them. Whereas I think that's really hard to measure in your personal life. So I can't say that, I've been a good enough friend in the past that I'm going to be a good friend to this person. And I've always felt like, oh, they're just, hanging out with me because they feel sorry for me, or because they feel like they should, or any of those kind of things. And I get that all the time. And I'm interested in myself as to know why I feel like that personally, but not professionally. But I think the way that I wouldn't say I get over it, but I'm quite a kind of resilient person. And I think, well, I've got to live in the moment. We're here now. We're having a good time. Don't question it. Don't worry about it. This is the situation that you're presented with, so just get on with it and enjoy it. There's far too many worse off people in the world that don't have the opportunities that we have, and don't have the friendships that we have, and the kind of social experiences that we are privy to. So, take what you've got and enjoy it, and keep enjoying it, and don't let your brain take over something that actually probably doesn't exist to start with. And it probably goes back to what I say about, and maybe it's a bit hypocritical of me to say it about women going to exercise classes, stop worrying about what everyone else thinks and go and enjoy it for you. And I probably should take my own advice.
Yeah, I think friendships can always be hard. We're all such multifaceted, interesting humans with our own stories and our own experiences of life, that you never know how someone might take something you say, or things like that. So I totally get the feeling of some of the challenges you've spoken of in friendship. Can I ask, Maggie, is there anything you've ever read or a book that you love, or that you find so inspiring that you'd like to tell our readers about?
It's quite tough because I did an English literature degree, so I've read a lot of books. Let me think. I think a book that really kind of touched me was A Thousand Splendid Suns, which is quite a famous book written about women's experience in Afghanistan, and I wrote about it in my second year kind of mini dissertation, so I studied it quite seriously, and it gave me a lot of perspective about how lucky I am to have grown up as a Western woman, and to the freedoms that I've had because of that. And I know things are changing, and we are definitely moving forward. And right across the world, I think things are moving forward, albeit maybe more slowly in some places. But it really opened my eyes to the fact that I'm so lucky to have had the experiences I've had, to have the support that I've had. My mum and dad never said, no, we're not taking you to that match, or no, we're not coming to watch you at your sports day. They were one of them at least was always there. And I think that's so, so important. And I think that book definitely made me, it raises a lot of questions about a lot of things, and I would implore anybody who listens to this podcast to go and give it a read, because it is a fantastic book, and has actually been made into a stage play which came to the Northern Stage in Newcastle in June, and I took my mum to go and see it because she was a big fan of the book as well, and it was just the most heart-wrenching thing to watch about how women can come together even in the most dire of circumstances, and how important that kind of solidarity is. So yeah, I think that would probably, there's a million more books that I could talk about, but that's probably up there with some of the best.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm really excited and inspired actually to read that book now. It's a book and a play that I've seen advertised and heard of, but never made the effort to learn more about. And actually hearing how much it's deeply affected you, that is something I would really be interested in exploring myself. And there is something that we always like to ask. So what is your number one word that you would like to say is how you approach your life, or what gets you out of bed in the morning, what keeps your zest, what helps you to stay true to yourself?
Am I allowed a phrase as opposed to a word?
Yeah,
is that allowed?
Go for it.
So I think my phrase would be roll with the punches. So I think I like to live life by taking on each challenge as it comes to face you. I think I've definitely, like, this past year has been very, very challenging for me for all sorts of different reasons. But I think I always like to kind of look at something and face it head on, deal with it as it presents itself, be honest, be true, and to face it with as much guts as you absolutely can. And whether that's a good thing, whether that's a challenge at work, whether that's something difficult in your personal life, I think rolling with the punches is so important. You have, otherwise what's the point? Where do you get to if you let a challenge stop you, if you let it prevent you from doing something that you love, or being with people that are important to you? So get up every day and just roll with the punches, no matter what they are.
I love that. I love how you are so enthusiastic and so vibrant. And how old are you now, Maggie?
I'm 22.
22. So to have such a beautiful attitude and courage and zest for life is really nice. And while we're talking about this, I do wonder if you have any comments on the way that girls are portrayed in the media, or just the way girls are reviewed or viewed in society today. Because just hearing what you've said, about overcoming your knee injury, overcoming some of the challenges you've mentioned, having the maturity and kindness to see other people's situations and circumstances and being grateful and having a sense of gratitude for your own, I think shows maturity way above your years. So I just wonder, have you any thoughts about women and girls today and the kind of
I think I've probably got more thoughts than we've got time for. I think I'm very lucky. I grew up with two older sisters and a mum and a poor dad who had so many women in his life. And we were lucky that, we weren't ever doubted by anybody. We were never questioned. I think I was very lucky in the time that I grew up in. So, girls now, I just because of my age, just kind of missed this era that's now all about, social media. I didn't have Instagram until I was like 20, I don't think. So I wasn't aware of what I looked like or what other people thought of me particularly. I think it was just starting to come into popularity in the kind of social media age. But I think I would just, if I could go into classrooms of 13-year-old girls and tell them that it's so important to just believe in yourself and to not worry about what everyone else thinks and to not live your life by it. And I think it makes me so sad that, girls now are so worried about what they look like. And, I didn't wear makeup for so long. I never wear makeup when I exercise. I'm just not worried about it. And I think that comes from having growing up in such a women loving environment. And I hope that, there can be some way that we can find a way through this mess of obsession with image. And I think, people in the public eye have a real responsibility to that. I think I do find it quite, interesting when some women famous women go on social media and say, I'm really supportive of women and, looking however they want to look. So here's one picture of me looking slightly less than perfect. But then the rest of my Instagram feed is me looking absolutely perfect. And I find that a little bit difficult. I think it's not real. It's not what everyone looks like all the time. But how are people supposed to believe that if that's all they see everywhere? But yeah, I just hope, certainly if I ever have daughters, that they won't worry about what they look like so much. I love to put on makeup, love to, dress up and feel good about myself. But there's so much more to us as women than what we look like. And I hope that, girls of the next generation, some way we can get that message to them.
I hope so too. And I hope that through fantastic initiatives like getting back in touch with sport and things like This Girl Can, and just through solidarity as women and girls together, through our friendships, through the role models that we become now for the women that we interact with and the girls we interact with going forward. I'm really, really delighted that you've come on the podcast today and shared these views. It's really timely and it's an important message.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
So Maggie, if anybody wants to find you anywhere, is there anywhere online that you like to hang out?
So I do have an Instagram profile. Apologies if it's not quite as beautiful as some of the ones you might have found out there. I try and make sure that I show my life rather than my face. So yeah, my Instagram kind of following is Maggie_Elstob. I think it might have a 96 on the end. That shows you how little time I really spend on it. But yeah, and I would, if there's any girls, women out there that want to know about getting into sport, I can talk to you about my own experience. If any of you got daughters that you're worried about that are gonna, drop out of playing sport and you think it's really important, I would love to hear from you, because it's something I feel so passionately and so strongly about. And I would love to kind of keep that movement going and get us women looking after each other.
Awesome. I'm really excited to hear about that, and I hope you get lots of messages.
I hope so too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You've been listening to Nurture Your Zest. You can find us online on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and LinkedIn at Nurture Your Zest. If you've liked today, please subscribe. You can also leave us a review if you're feeling extra kind. Today's podcast has been made available through the kind sponsorship of TL Multimedia and That Branding Company. We look forward to catching up with you again soon as you learn to nurture your zest.